Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinema Scholar. My name is Michael, and I'm here to talk about movies. This week I'll be talking about Hyde Park on Hudson, a British-made historical drama that saw a limited US release in December. This movie had a lot of things going for it. World War II is the best setting for any work of fiction other than space because it features people like us forced to adapt to impossible circumstances and triumph over an unambiguously evil enemy. Franklin Roosevelt is one of the most interesting historical characters of the 20th century, and one that hasn't been explored in fiction nearly enough for my taste. Bill Murray proved his dramatic acting potential in Lost in Translation. The film features unconventional but inspired casting choices such as British sketch and sitcom actor Olivia Colman as the Queen of England. Also, the director has previously won a BAFTA, or a British Academy of Film and Television Award. So this movie should be good, right? Wrong. Hyde Park on Hudson is a stale, pretentious piece of Oscar bait that thinks it's far more interesting than it is. It has the most obnoxious narration since Harrison Ford in Blade Runner's theatrical cut. It is a grotesque example of unnecessary orange-blue color grading. The main character of the film is the least interesting character in the entire movie. The climax of the film is no joke, a freaking picnic that's only tangentially related to what the movie wants us to believe is the main plot. The hot dog gag that forms the resolution of the story is played about 3 more times after it stops being funny. And then, it turns out to be the resolution. So I was angry when I left the theater. How could you screw this up this bad? You had World War II, you had personal drama with historical implications, and you had the freaking Roosevelts. This could have been good. I'm getting ahead of myself already. So here's a brief plot recap before we really take this thing apart. It's June 1939, just 3 months before the onset of World War II, and the King and Queen of England are coming to visit America. Rather than taking them to the White House, Franklin Delano Roosevelt takes them to his country estate on the Hudson River in Hyde Park, New York, therefore Hyde Park on Hudson. His goal is to use their visit to rally more American support for the Allies. Meanwhile, FDR carries on an illicit affair with his sixth cousin, Margaret Suckley, played by Laura Linney. Eventually, much to Laura Linney's dismay, the Bill Murray handjob service turns out to have many more employees than she thought. Yeah, beat that, Bill Clinton. FDR had an entire harem, and he was in a wheelchair. So, I thought I was going to see the psychological effects of leading the nation into World War II in a complex and flawed man, and how the cousin harem helped him cope with the realities of politics. Instead, I got, a loose collection of trivia that in the long run is not made important, meaningful, or satisfying to watch in any other way. Laura Linney narrates the entire movie in an insufferable, geographically untraceable drawl that wins my award for most irritating voice of the year. Yes, she's just as bad as Russell Crowe in Les Mis, possibly worse. Her character lacks any sort of depth or growth, and Laura Linney does not make up for it. I did not come to see Bill Murray's handjob service through the eyes of the least interesting character in the entire movie. I feel like the most interesting parts of the movie were all going on in the room next to the one they were filming. It's like if you got to interview the most interesting man in the world, but instead of talking about his great achievements, he shows you his stamp collection, then kicks you out. Incidentally, there is also actually a scene in which FDR shows Margaret his stamp collection. It's one of the more memorable scenes in the entire movie. Another memorable scene is near the beginning, when Bill Murray drives Laura Linney out to a meadow in Hyde Park, places her hand on his knee, then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she just gives him a handjob. I've seen many strange and uncomfortable things in my time, but nothing really prepares you for an elderly Bill Murray handjob. This movie seems to have been made for Bill Murray to win the Oscar he didn't win for Lost in Translation, since he's the most interesting character in this mess. There's a very powerful scene in which FDR talks to King George VI, played by Samuel West, i.e. not Colin Firth, about whether or not this visit can inspire goodwill between Americans and British people. King George doesn't see how he can inspire anyone with his speaking difficulties. At one point he says, "This damn stutter," to which Bill Murray replies, "This damn polio." That's the best scene in the entire movie. I would really like to know why the rest of the movie wasn't all this. Olivia Colman of the British comedy Peep Show plays the Queen of England. She is a great comedic actress, but she can also go really dramatic when she needs to. Anyone who's seen Peep Show knows what I'm talking about. She really does get across the feeling that the world you were raised to run is about to come crashing down. This, and FDR and King George, these are what you should be focusing on. The greatest irony of the movie is that the rediscovered box of Margaret Stickley's writings that inspired this movie are far less interesting than the event she's only tangentially involved in. The camera work is kind of a mixed bag. At times there are glimpses of brilliance. In the first stamp collection scene, yeah, that's right, there are more than one of them, the camera goes from showing only FDR and only Margaret Stickley to showing both of them in the same shot. Their distance from each other within the space on camera mirrors their emotional distance, and as they grow closer through the course of a scene, the distance between the two decreases. That's an old trick that dates back to at least Citizen Kane in 1941. But it's a good one that does what the camera is for. It reinforces themes and conveys information on a more subtle level than in the script. On the other hand, the film is a truly egregious example of orange and blue color grading, that is, manipulating the color saturation so that the entire film looks blue and orange. This is usually done because the crew needs some way to make the characters' skin tones pop out against the background, so they make the skin orange and everything else blue or teal. I'm not against this technique in general because eliminating it would be like a painter choosing never to use a certain color. It's just that here it doesn't work at all because every character looks like they're on fire or they have pneumonia. Lighting this overt does not fit in a realistic historical drama. It's just too goddamn much. So let me tell you about the film's structure. It's trying to carry two separate plots, the Bill Murray handjob service plot and the royal visit plot. Problem is, they are never ever brought together in a way that feels natural. There is an excruciatingly long period of time towards the end in which Laura Linney is stewing about not being the only butter on FDR's scone, if you see what I mean. Meanwhile, the king and queen are whining to each other about the indignity of being forced to eat hot dogs. It actually is funny the first time or so, but the movie's so fucking pleased with itself for making this joke that it feels the need to repeat itself way more times than necessary, to the point where the joke stops being funny and starts being annoying. Do you want to know what the resolution to this movie is? This is the last thing you see before the credits roll, the movie's final chance to redeem itself. The big finish is this. King George VI eats a hot dog. Everybody laughs. Roll credits. This fucking running gag is the resolution to the entire plot of the movie. I have never seen a movie so clearly designed to win Oscars, written with such little respect for itself. They thought they could just stick aging actors, a very interesting historical setting, and very interesting historical characters together, and wait for the movie to magically win awards. Yeah, sorry, that doesn't work on me, Sonny. This is not art. This movie has as much artistic depth as a fucking math equation, because that's how it was put together. Historical period plus historical characters plus aging actor equals Oscars. What really makes me hate this movie is not merely that it wasn't engaging, it's that it thought this was good enough to impress the kind of people who go to see these movies. So, in conclusion, Hyde Park on Hudson is utterly vacuous garbage. This has been the Cinema Scholar. I'll see you next time.